Is Washington state growing or is it not? This video is in response to a bunch of comments we got on one of our other videos when we said Washington state was not growing. And what happens with all data is most people get on Google, they go to ChatGPT, they hear something on TikTok, they take the first level of data and assume that is the fact. We're talking about critical thinking here, people. We're talking about going 3 layers deep and digging into the data. So today we're going to dig into the data and answer the question, is Washington state actually growing? And I'm going to tell you right up front, we are not. But the data hides something and it makes it look like we are. And I want you to ask yourself a simple question. Do you know of more people lately that have been talking about moving out of the state or leaving the state due to some of our problems that we're having here in Washington? More or less? Just let me know in the comments. Drop them below. I'm Anton Stetner. I'm a real estate guy. We've been doing real estate here in the Seattle Metro for over 20 years. I love our state. I love the economy. I love business. I love finance and real estate and real estate investing. And we're going to talk about all the things that affect it, because when we start talking about population, what's going to happen to home prices? What's going to happen to rent? And we'll finish with that. Let's get right to the heart of the matter. Natural population growth in Washington has collapsed. The only thing keeping our population growing is net migration, and it's foreign migration into Washington state. It's not domestic migration from out of state, it's from out of the country. Basically, ever since COVID, you've seen the population rate, including the foreign migration, start to decline. In 2018, we had about 7.4 million people. The population grew about 1.6%. There was a natural increase of about 31,000 with a net migration of about 88,000. Fast forward to 2024, we're at 8 million people here in Washington state. Annual percentage rate of growth has dropped to barely over 1%, with 15,000 coming from the natural increase and 70,000 coming from net migration. So even the migration is slowing down coming to Washington state. But basically, we're not having enough babies here to replace our aging population. The over 65 population now represents almost 18% of the population here in Washington state. We're not having enough babies and there's not people moving in from other states. So we talked about lower birth rates. And let's talk about Washingtonians leaving. Ever since COVID, Washingtonians themselves have been fleeing in record numbers. They've been heading to other states such as Idaho, Arizona, Texas, anywhere outside of Washington. Why have they been running away from Washington? Seattle ranks 12th, and it's due very specifically to high cost of living. It's really expensive to live here. The taxes have been rising. The political environment has become more restrictive, and people are feeling like their opportunities in Washington state are starting to slow down, and that because we don't have an income tax and we have a sales tax, it disproportionately hurts the middle and bottom end versus helping the top wage earners in Washington state. When you look around the Seattle Metro and all of a sudden in King County, the median price home is right around $1 million. And when you go to Snohomish County north of that, the median priced home is around $800K. And the average rent is between $2,500 to $3,500 a month. Add that in with gas and all these crazy gas taxes, and the fact that we can't build homes affordably, and that our economy is becoming completely based on tech, and that the politics here got so crazy for a moment, it caused a bunch of people to flee. But I don't think this is an unsolvable problem. And who has been coming into Washington? International migrants have been saving Washington's population. Let's just be really blunt. It's tech workers. 22% of jobs in Washington are in tech. This is the highest share in the United States. We love our tech workers. We want a ton of our tech workers because those are great, high-paying jobs. But we also want Washingtonians to stay here, have babies here, raise their families here, build strong communities here. That's what keeps Washington the way it has been for a long period of time. But the problem is that next generation, everyone starts to say, I don't know if my kids will ever be able to afford a home here. That becomes the fundamental problem: affordable housing and the sheer cost of living in Washington state. So if Washington state is completely dependent upon tech workers and kind of this flow of immigration, what happens as tech slows down? What happens as AI comes for their jobs and starts to slow down that part of the industry, will our population then turn negative? And Washington state just passed one of the largest tax increases in history, making it more burdensome for the middle class here in Washington and businesses. We got to start changing some of this stuff now. And I've talked about this many times, but please understand the Growth Management Act controls suburban sprawl here in Washington state. That pinches our supply artificially. Plus, it's really hard with the red tape to go do a land development or get a building permit here. Both of these things, the lack of available land and the permitting timelines and fees associated with it, are massively driving up housing costs in our area, which leads to a lack of affordability, which increases home prices, which is also increasing rents. So do we want Washington and the Seattle Metro to become the Silicon Valley, like 2.0, or do we want to pave our own path and start creating opportunities? So I want to look at this from two different sides of this coin. If our population growth is reliant upon mobile, high-income earning tech workers, what's happened is we've created an unstable tax base. What happens as immigration laws keep changing, as these H-1B1 visas, they're talking about charging $100,000 for them. What happens as less tech workers start to come into Washington? This is a point we have to start massively considering today. How do we attract people domestically from other states and inside Washington state to grow our population? How do we then provide them affordable, attainable housing? How do we then allow them to create a strong, stable middle class here in Washington state? Immigration, both domestically from inside the United States and outside the United States, while encouraging the people in Washington to have some babies and stay. Because rent growth is going to continue to push up. The vacancy factor is still below 5% throughout most of the Seattle Metro, with rents rising slightly above the rate of inflation. And there's not a bunch of developments coming to bring in a bunch of rentals. So we have to, one, fundamentally change housing by building more supply. That is an unsexy answer, but that is the truth. Two, we have to fight back against the Puget Sound Regional Council and all the government bureaucrats who don't want more buildable land and who are slowing down the land development process and the building process. Three, we have to do everything humanly possible to incentivize small business here in Washington state to grow their businesses here, to hire people and bring them here. Let's stop attacking them with excess B&O taxes, excess sales taxes, and the burdensome regulatory environment that Washington keeps putting on small business. And these policy shifts and an increase in housing could lead to a massive boom here in Washington state. But we have to stop our tax and spend mentality. Well, what does this mean for real estate? We talked about rents, but let's actually talk about housing for a second. Right now, this year, throughout most of the Seattle Metro, home prices have appreciated between 2 to 5%, depending on where you're at. So basically right around the rate of inflation. But what's happening to the 10-year Treasury today? It's starting to trend in a downward direction. The Federal Reserve is talking about cutting interest rates. As we cut rates, home prices are going to start outpacing inflation again. So mark my words, in 2026, you will see above average appreciation relative to inflation and above average relative to 2025. You'll go back to probably what it was previously. Expect 5% or greater. That's not sustainable unless we start building more housing. As an investor, go buy something, go build a dadu. I don't care where you do it here in the Seattle Metro. Anywhere in the Metro, it's going to be a great way to do it. Owning rental properties near downtown Seattle, near where these tech workers have high paying salaries. Going to be great for the foreseeable future, but we need to watch out for what is AI doing to those specific jobs. Let's go look at where the data centers are going in. Where can we put money into those locations? Let's go look at office spaces that are going to be changed and new uses put into place. Let's look at what they're doing with a lot of the big malls around here where they're putting in new multifamily. There's also massive opportunity for people who want to flip homes or build homes in that starter home price range and in the median home price range. That's going to massively be there. There's also that opportunity for that first-time home buyer. Yes, it's hard to get in on our property ladder, but as you get in on the property ladder, you will get above average appreciation, which will help you build massive equity for the future. And I believe that we can turn all of this around. This is not meant to be doom and gloom. This is meant to be awareness. But we need tax reform. We need business reform. We need policies that promote making babies in Washington state and staying in Washington state. We need policies that bring people domestically and internationally into Washington state. We cannot continue to have this population slowing down on its current trajectory. Otherwise, what happens is we become the next Detroit, and that's not what I want to see. So if you like staying ahead of the data, the economic numbers, and looking at these trends and talking about what it means for us locally and what it means for real estate, hit that subscribe button, drop any questions below, tell me what I missed, because I know I missed something here in this quick little video, but I need us to understand very simply, our population is basically shrinking if we don't include people from outside the US moving to Washington state. We have to change that because we can't be just reliant on tech workers. So thank you for listening to our rant about population and tech. I appreciate you spending time with me today.